Hello everybody, welcome back to more Sins of the Father. In the previous chapter, Martha did a touch reading thing for Amanda on the talisman, and she witnessed the death of the witch that gave the magic to William Ford before to enable him to summon a demon before he died. And oddly enough, contrary to what they had been told, didn't look like it had been him that had killed him. Much to Amanda's relief and surprisingly to Martha's relief as well. So I'm going to carry on with chapter 24 and we're going to find out what happens next. Chapter 24. 20 minutes later, Martha was alone. Parker had gone to show his guests out of the building, and while Amanda hadn't wanted to go, she acquiesced to his request and explanation that Martha had already been through a lot, what with the crash and all. She needed to rest so she could finally fix everything that had gone wrong in the Ford residence the following day. Her little sister was so grateful to learn that her father was not a murderer that Martha suspected she would have danced through hoops if it pleased the host. The girl was all but giddy now that she'd stopped crying. For what it was worth, Martha was happy with the outcome as well. She didn't have fond memories of the man in question, but she hadn't wanted her sister to have to live with the dark shadows of a killer's legacy. As flawed as the man was, and Martha had first-hand experience of his many terrible flaws, he was not a murderer. It was something she supposed, and she was still struggling to figure out why she cried upon uncovering the revelation. Was it simply empathy on behalf of her beloved sister, or something much more personal that she didn't want to admit? Parker came back, locking the entrance behind him. From the doorway of the lounge, he softly announced, "It's okay, they're gone now. You don't have to socialise anymore. You're officially free." "I didn't mind that part," she admitted. "Is Amanda okay?" "Emotional, but that's to be expected," he said. "She was so afraid of what you were going to say, I think she went into shock. So did I for a while there, I think." Without needing to be asked, he came into the room and sat down next to her on the sofa. He didn't reach out to touch her, however, leaving a respectable distance between the two of them. The lounge was still in relative darkness, the only illumination from one of the several lamps as she complained that her head hurt after finishing a glass of water. It was enough to cast a soft glow across the two of them, making it feel like they were the only two people left in the world, a feeling that Martha realised she enjoyed very much. It was so comforting, so familiar, her safe place. It felt like it was living up to the name. "Talk to me," Parker said, eventually breaking the comfortable silence that had fallen between them. "Tell me what you're feeling." "I don't know what I'm feeling right now," she answered honestly. "I've gotten so used to thinking the worst of him that it didn't seem like much of a stretch to think that he could have killed that woman. I let my prejudices cloud my judgment, and if Amanda hadn't asked me to do that for her tonight, I might have gone on letting her think that her dad was an evil man. It's unforgivable." "He wasn't exactly a saint, Martha," he reminded her. "I know that," she sighed unhappily. "God, do I know that. But maybe we've been looking at this whole thing wrong. Just because he was awful to me doesn't mean that he was still that man. Maybe he simply tried to do magic and foolishly got himself into trouble." "Do you believe that?" he asked, not judging. "I don't know what to believe anymore." To give Parker his due, he didn't attempt to tell her that everything was going to be all right. Perhaps he knew that she would not believe him. Perhaps he simply didn't think it himself. Martha's hand went to her head, rubbing the ache that had settled behind her brow. She was unsure if it was from the crying or the psychic reading or the blow that she'd taken earlier on, but it hurt a lot. Parker asked her, "Do you want me to get you some painkillers?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "There's no point. They don't work for me anymore. My system processes them too fast to be effective, and they only end up making me feel sick." After a stretch of silence, he said, "Well, okay then." "Sorry," she said, grimacing. "The last thing I want to do is freak you out again. I should probably think before I say things." With a soft laugh, he assured her, "Don't worry about that. You thought I was going to kill you a few hours ago. I didn't. Not really." Heaving a pretty hefty sigh, he explained. "I was shocked by what happened. I can't deny that. I watched you fist fight and kill a dozen of guys who were twice your size, and you did it as if they were the weakest creatures on the planet. But I know they weren't. I know that because I shot one of them twice and he looked annoyed by it. only backed off when I finally aimed for its head. You shouldn't have had to do that, Martha said, swallowing down her feelings of guilt that he'd been placed in such a terrifying position. It wasn't fair. Her life was so very dangerous at times. I have no problem handling myself in a fight, he tried to assure her. You know, when the odds aren't ridiculously stacked against me. She offered, if it makes you feel any better, they were stacked against both of us, not just you. If Stefan and his brothers hadn't shown up, it would have been very bad. I was outnumbered and overwhelmed. I just kept fighting because I had no choice. Did you not know that your friends were in the woods? No, she replied. I only knew for sure once I saw the bodies. Parker visibly swallowed. There were even more bodies. In the woods, she told him. The vanguards, that's what we call those types of demons, must have sensed them coming. They were afraid. And they knew there would be no match for them. That's why they fled, right into Stefan's ambush. Didn't stand a chance. And while she would have liked to have taken credit for what had transpired in those woods, Martha knew that she was simply not that scary, not when the odds were so stacked against her. Looking back at the sequence of events, Martha had to give Stefan his due. That male knew strategy like the back of his hand. While others, upon sensing their young protégé in danger, might have jumped right into the fray, he instead led his brothers into the woods behind the lines of the attacking vanguards and ambushed them from there when they fled, thus ensuring that none of them escaped. It was as smart a move as it was impressive, and what Stefan North probably dreamed about in his sleep. Seeing the pensive confusion which furrowed Parker's brow, she asked him, Now, you're going to have to tell me what you're thinking. He smirked. You mean you don't know? Still, it doesn't quite work like that. You always used to just read me like an open book, he said. I always used to do a lot of things I shouldn't, she replied. One of the things that came with all of my training was not only learning to control my abilities, but understand them better. As a teenager, I was arrogant at times. She allowed herself to chuckle as she added, I was Walsh. Never really cared whether a person I read wanted me to do so or not. I just did it. It wasn't very appropriate. Gazing at her side on, he said, I never minded. I know, she assured him, but your thoughts and feelings, they're your own. Nobody has a right to them, no matter who they are. Parker laughed softly, shook his head. You did grow up. Just a bit. But now stop deflecting and tell me what you were thinking when I asked a few minutes ago. Pretty please. Feeling less nervous about the statement, he said, I know that the things attacked us, those vanguards, as you called them, were demons, because the really big guy told me, and then you just confirmed it. But I have to admit, I can't help but wonder what the hell your friends are, given that demons are so afraid of fighting them that they turn tail and run away right into an ambush. They are... Martha tried to think of the best way to describe her otherworldly allies. Warriors. Stefan and all his brothers were born and raised to fight demons on the mortal plane. It's who they are. It's what they're here to do. They're scary for the same reason they're so good at it, because they've done it for a very long time. They're not human either, are they? He stated, rather than asked. No, they're not, she confirmed. At least not completely. They have humanity written into their heritage. Their biological mothers were all human, but they would never consider themselves as such. Do they have something as simple as a name? He pushed, seemingly clutching for whatever answers he could get. Martha nodded. They do. And what would you call them? I would call them by their actual individual names, like Stefan and Isaac. That was the really big guy. She smiled at his description of her mentor's second in command. If you're asking about what they would call themselves as a race, then I suppose the term Nephilim's appropriate. At least, that's what their elders call them. They're the living, fighting results of the sons of God laying down with the daughters of man. Or something archaic like that. Okay, Parker seemed to let that sink in. Martha was not at all surprised by his next inquiry. So where do you fit into all of this? I am... me, she said, being as honest as she felt she could. I was rescued by them, by Stefan. You were right about that. After I was found, they took me to where they live and they let me stay there as I recovered. It's rather strange, but they became like family to me. And now I live amongst them, I fight amongst them. Some think I deserve to be there, many others don't. Regardless, they've accepted me in their way. I'm one of them. Sort of. And what do you think about if you deserve to be there? It's complicated, she admitted. More so than I think that I can share with you at the moment. But I know that I deserve what little station I have. I know that I've worked bloody hard to get to the point where I consider myself good enough to be accepted into their ranks. I don't consider myself to be their equal. Perhaps I never truly will be. But my life with them is not the same as it might have been if I'd been able to stay here. I have a reason to get up in the morning, to feel like things that I do make a difference. I see the bigger picture now and it's terrifying. But I feel like I have to step up and fight for what I believe in. I don't get to enjoy the luxury of being normal anymore. She stopped, sighed, shook her head. Not that I ever was normal, was I? She pondered. Christ, I'm so sorry, Parker. You didn't need to hear all that. No, it's all right, he assured her. It doesn't matter to me, none of it. Ultimately, everything I saw tonight only freaked me out because it doesn't freak me out. I've been through a lot of shit and seen even more of it working at Empire. Knowing that you've survived and that you can handle some of the worst stuff I've ever seen only makes me think that you're even more incredible now than I already knew that you were. You were always so remarkable, Martha. She raised an eyebrow in his direction. You really think that? Yeah, he stated, as if it was not something to be debated. I always loved you because you were different, not in spite of it. Once again, Martha didn't know what to say to that, so she simply did what she did best when she felt overwhelmed. She said nothing, let an uncomfortable silence fall between them that she didn't know how to fill because she suddenly felt acutely aware of what Stefan had bluntly stated about her personal feelings. She was not ashamed that her humanity made her emotional in a way that he nor his brothers would ever understand. However, she had to admit that even in his rude bluntness, he had a point. She was not there to reconnect with her personal history. She'd been granted a chance that many amongst her peers had long craved, and she couldn't be seen to squander it by getting so very distracted. Stretching, she rolled her neck. I think it's time to call it a night. I'll go make up the spare bed for you, Parker said, getting to his feet without hesitation. Amanda brought some of your things over from the house. I'll get your bag. Room and bathroom are at the end of the hall. You have the bathroom all to yourself. I have an ensuite. Thanks, she said, and let him go, feeling deflated. He was such a good man and a wonderful friend. She was lucky to have him back in her life in any capacity. But when she looked at him, and when they were together alone, she couldn't help but want more, couldn't help but ponder whether it would be so bad to reconnect, even if she could never allow herself to get so involved that her commitment suffered. For they'd never simply been boyfriend and girlfriend. Michael Parker had always been her best friend, and she wanted that back. She wanted him back, however she was able to have him. And that thought well and truly terrified her, enough to push her personal feelings down where they could no longer be intimidating. She hated doing it, for it was a long time since she'd allowed anybody to treat her like a china doll, least of all herself. Usually she'd face her fears head on, but in this scenario she was certain that wouldn't be the best course of action. She had to subjugate her feelings for Parker or embrace them. There was no in-between when it came down to her relationship with the man that she'd be staying with. There couldn't be. They had too much personal history. Resigning herself to a decision, Martha found her feet and left the lounge, switching off the single lamp as she went. The bedrooms were through a door at the back of the kitchen. Martha didn't feel as awkward as she probably should have wandering through them, through somebody else's home, but that didn't surprise her. She couldn't exactly put a finger on why she felt so comfortable and safe inside of the walls of Parker's home. Given the calibre of her enemies, the residence of a mortal human man should never make her feel either thing, but it did. She suspected she knew why, but it made no sense to her. Heading down the hallway, she ignored the first door on the left, knowing full well that it was the owner's bedroom and not wanting to have that image in her head. She found him in what was to be her room, throwing a couple of pillows down onto the double-sized bed. Martha took a moment to gaze around her new abode, not surprised that it was sparsely furnished, with bedside tables, a dresser, a closet, but little else, other than a small reading lamp and chocolate-coloured curtains that matched the red and brown bed covers. It was perfect, all that she needed for now. But her mind was focused upon something else, something she felt that she needed to get an answer to. Saying his name to get his attention, she asked, "Have you got magical warding on this building?" He laughed softly. "Yeah, why does that surprise you?" You're a null, she pointed out, as if he didn't already know. Yes, but I spend a lot of my days investigating the kind of thing that don't give a crap whether or not I have mystical or magical abilities, he shrugged. Olivia did it when we got divorced. Neither her or Walsh were happy about me not being protected adequately while I was at home, and they're both very insistent when they want to be. Very smart, Martha thought. If she were to objectively look at the Empire team in a way that something without a moral compass might, she may have considered him to be the weak link in their impressive chain. That would have been a rookie mistake, Martha knew that herself, but on paper he'd seemed vulnerable, an easy target. And still she found herself wondering, has anything ever tried to get in here before? Not here they haven't, he responded. Where? She pressed. That's not my story to tell. All you need to know is that everyone who works for Empire has protective wardings on their home to prevent them from being targeted by anything nasty that might decide to follow us back. It's now standard practice. He paused, cocked his head to the side in consideration. Can't say I ever really gave it much thought. I mean, I know it's there, but it's not like I can feel it or sense it, so I forget about it, to be honest. Do you mind if I take a look? Martha asked out of politeness. He shrugged again. Be my guest. Martha closed her eyes and focused, letting her psychic defences fall away. Magical energy was not her forte, but she sensed the warding on the summoning circle, inadvertently impressing the same practitioner who had warded Parker's home, so she was hopeful that she couldn't sense it here. She needed to focus, give a little bit of herself in the process, which was as easy said as done. Her personal energy flowed from deep within her, passing through her skin like it was inconsequential, not a barrier. Martha felt the protective spells almost instantly, like a buzzing of energy, a layer above her flesh, mingling with her own and creating heat, like the balmy rays of a sun. It simultaneously warmed her and made her shiver. Hoping for the best, she nervously opened her eyes and gasped in astonishment. Oh my, wow, she marvelled. This is, wow. Hidden from the naked eye were hundreds of ancient runic symbols written in something far more primal than man-made paint. They dotted the room as she imagined they likely dotted the entire apartment, shimmering gold like an ethereal mirage on the walls, doors, windows, especially the windows. Even the ceiling emitted that beautiful, mesmerising hue. It was stunning. Olivia Maxwell was one talented lady indeed. You can see it? Parker asked, seemingly interested. Yeah, she admired, looking around the room. So beautiful. If you say so. Oh, I wish that you could see this, she said. Parker didn't say that he wished it too, and she didn't apologise, mistakenly thinking that she'd said something insensitive. She'd known Michael Parker long enough to know that as much as he respected his psychic and magic friends, he'd never envy them their gifts, because he'd seen what being different was like for her when they were growing up. He'd never craved that attention, and that hadn't seemed to change. Nevertheless, she offered her hand out to him. He laughed softly and took it, even though they both knew very well that even by proxy he wouldn't be able to feel what she felt, see what she was seeing. He simply did not have that in him. But that didn't mean she wouldn't try and share the experience, give him something special too. Standing directly in front of her, Parker was so close that his proximity made her skin twitch. Not his fault. It was simply the result of her having her psychic defences down and their deep emotional connection because she was an empath. Love and happiness and admiration were all pretty strong emotions, and he gazed down at her, sparkling blue eyes letting him know that he enjoyed that she'd reached out for him of her own accord, and hadn't hesitated or frozen in the way that she had every other time that they'd made physical contact. Martha knew that she was never going to be able to explain why she did that sometimes, and it seemed to be a conversation that he didn't need to have. She'd been hurt, so badly, but never by him. He had mourned and missed her. He had welcomed her back into his life in spite of how badly she'd hurt him, and was now more than prepared to respect her boundaries. But more than that, he understood why those boundaries were there in the first place. He knew her pain, had seen her new life in all of its brutality, and still accepted her because of who she was and what she was, not in spite of it. That was something worthy of being happy about. Martha tucked herself in against his body, her ear pressed against his chest, and let him wrap his arms around her and simply hold her for a while. It made her laugh softly to discover that she found the sound of his heartbeat thumping against her ear fascinating, not able to recall the last time she'd heard the pulse of another mortal being, and took some comfort in that knowledge that the last time she had it must have been his. In that moment she decided that it didn't matter what any other being thought. Her old personal connections were so much more to her than a distraction. She needed them as much as they needed her. If it was possible, maybe she could find a balance. Maybe her new life didn't have to jar with the old. Martha would never shun her humanity when she was legitimately human-born, nor would she shun the people who loved her for who she was, in favour of obligation to those who admired her for what she could potentially become. Stefan and his brothers were equally a part of who she was, however. They were her strength, her resolve, her endurance. Her mentor was a cranky and stubborn male when he wanted to be, but she knew implicitly that he'd only ever had her best interests in mind. She was as important to him as she was to her human loved ones. And for the first time, she not only wanted both of her lives, she believed with all her heart that maybe, just maybe, she could be allowed to have them. And that was a wonderful feeling indeed. Okay, so, yeah. Once again, I'm just going to let the words of the chapter speak for themselves. Nice little personal moment at the end there. Yeah, so thank you, as always, for tuning in. We are getting close to the end. There really isn't that much left. So it should probably be a few dates more. I hope everyone's had a wonderful weekend. And I will be back tomorrow for more Sins of the Father. Thank you very much for watching.